Well, thank you again. Just want to remind you, we've got these business cards printed up now. They're out on the credenza out there and in the fellowship hall. Just gives the information about Unity of Tampa, so you can suggest to somebody that they check us out. It's got all the information on there, including the website. So I always carry a couple in my wallet. You never know when you're having a conversation, and you can pull out the card and just hand it to the person. So, first I should say good morning. Have you ever had everything planned out carefully? You got your plan, and then suddenly everything seems to go wrong. Of course, this happened to a lot of us, whether it's your plan for the next hour, your plan for the day, the plan for the week, the month, the life, where things are not unfolding the way we wish they would. And I have found that if I'm willing to just let go and let God, that things go a lot more smoothly. And I actually often get a spiritual lesson in the situation that I wasn't able to see in the first. Now, as many of you know, Carla and I just started here, on January 1st. We were here for the Christmas services and the like, so we were interviewing at other congregations the previous year, and we had an interview at one of the congregations in the Seattle area, and we were living in Indianapolis at the time. So, we booked a flight on United from, flying from Indianapolis to Chicago, and then flying from Chicago to Seattle. We had a 45-minute turnaround at O'Hare Airport, but same airline shouldn't be a problem. We fly up to Chicago and make it there. They're boarding the plane, and then they make an announcement and said, well, turns out this plane flew through a thunderstorm out west of us, and there was some hail in the thunderstorm, and it stripped the paint off the nose cone. We can't use this plane. So we're going to have everybody, get off of the plane and just wait in the waiting area, see if we can find another plane. Okay. Taking a nice deep breath here. And the idea of it, of course, is, when you fly in for an interview weekend, usually you got a full day on Saturday of interviews and meeting people, and then, of course, on Sunday, doing the Sunday lesson, that sort of a thing. So we're supposed to get in like mid-afternoon in Seattle, but I'm thinking, well, no big deal, so we get in late. 2 hours later, they say, okay, if you'll head down about 300 feet, in this direction to the gate, we've got a plane. So we all head down there, waiting in the gate area to get on the plane. We're waiting more and more. Another couple of hours, and it's like, suddenly they said, well, this plane came through that same thunderstorm, but it wasn't hit by hail, but it was struck by lightning, and some of the electronics need some work, so you're not going to want to fly on this plane either. And then about a half hour later, they said, well, we can't find another plane, so we're canceling the flight. It's like, oh, great. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, man, I'm going to... And they said, but you can go to the ticket counter, maybe we can find another flight for you, or we'll put you up for the night. So I'm over at the ticket counter, waiting in line, and I start to think about, how my mind is just racing off with all of the fears and insecurities about the situation. Oh my God, they'd have to reschedule us, or we just would be in, late on Saturday. And then I start thinking, okay, now what would Reverend Bob Euler talk to the panicked Bob Euler over here, and what would be the spiritual counseling I would give? And I started realizing, okay, wait a minute here. I need to relax. I need to go within and see what kind of guidance I'm getting. So I'm standing in line at the ticket counter, and of course, as you get near the front of the line, you can hear what they're telling the other people, and they're basically saying, "There's no way we can fly out today. We'll have to fly out tomorrow, or put you up for a hotel tonight." So I get up to the counter and I said, "Well, I kind of overhear what's going on here. Is it possible, that I could fly another airline or something like that?" She said, "You need to go over to the courtesy phone and talk to our main reservations." And I said, "Okay, that's no problem." So one thing nobody's mentioned is what happened to our luggage. If I'm going to stay at a hotel here in Chicago tonight, she said, "Oh, well, it turns out there was another flight to Seattle soon after yours. It was full, but we went ahead and put the luggage on that, figuring that you were going to be flying there anyway. And so your luggage is in Seattle waiting for you." So again, deep breath, just getting centered and calm. It's like, okay, I'm going to place this all in divine order. knowing that the proper sequence of events are going to unfold for the highest good. And I'm on the courtesy phone, and first, they take you through the computer and the voice prompts, and of course it tells me, okay, well, you can't fly to Seattle today, blah, 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 blah. If you want to talk to a live person, and finally I was able to click that button. And I get the live person on the line, and I say, well, here's the situation. I said, I've got a job interview. I'm a minister, job interview starts tomorrow morning. Surely there's got to be some way you can get me to Seattle today, even if it's a connected flight to someplace else, So she very nicely was on the line with me for about 2 minutes. She goes, we can do it. We can get you and Carla there. We're going to put you on an American Airlines flight to St. Louis, and then there you'll need to transfer to an Alaska Airlines flight from St. Louis to Seattle. You get in late tonight, but hey, great. So we got in there that night. But I was realizing how, here again, we filter our past experiences. The present experiences filter through the past experiences. I start to get anxious. I start to get worried. And when I let go, suddenly something came through. Our talk title today is Let Go and Let God. Now, it seems to be an overused phrase, and it certainly is a lot easier said than done. And this is the 6th week of our Fearless Living series, 6th week of 7. We're reading together. I'm going to have Duncan put up the book, The Eye of the Storm, Embracing Conflict, Creating Peace. This wonderful book is one of Unity's bestsellers, and it's this week we're covering chapter 9, and then the final week we'll cover chapter 8 and 10. So let me quickly review our themes over these weeks. First week was, nothing and nobody is against me. The universe fully supports me in being all I'm centered to be. Now I realize all of these are counterintuitive, or I should say they're opposite of what society teaches us. Second week was embrace the tiger. I embrace conflict with ease, being open to each new opportunity to stretch and grow my spiritual awareness. Third week was love your enemies. I release judgment about myself and others. Fourth week was you're not alone. I release the illusion of separation and I relax into the bliss of divine communion with God and all other people. Fifth week was see it right, not make it right. And that was I see through the clear eyes of love and faith and find God present in every circumstances. And we also started a 21-day opportunity for reconciliation process. It's a 21-day journaling exercise, and the handouts are out there on the credenza if you missed those. So then the idea is for us to learn how to communicate in a more healthy way as individuals, for us as a community, for Unity of Tampa. And of course, this will culminate in 2 weeks on Saturday, October 27th, where we'll have our free workshop called Honoring Our Past, Creating Our Future. We'll spend the day together. And I know we've got information in the bulletin there, but I have seen this process transform literally hundreds of congregations in the Unity movement who've gone through a transition. And so with the transition we've gone through over the last few years, this will allow us to really just kind of unload our baggage and move forward. And of course, a lot of people have talked about it. Isn't it interesting with in our nation and in our world right now, with the upcoming election, and of course it's October, and there's a lot of money being put into ads negatively portraying various candidates. So yeah, it can be a challenge to remain centered, but we're going to do that. So, Duncan, if you put up the next slide. Earlier we talked about the 4 winds of conflict. These are all 4 things that happen within us that cause us to feel a disconnection from God. And if we are willing to recognize there's an antidote to each of these 4, we can live life in a much healthier way. And so the first was separation, and we know that the separation, the antidote to that is communion, recognizing that we're all connected to each other and to God. And then the next one was perception. The antidote to that was spiritual principle, being ready to apply our faith and our love. Our faith is the presence of God is here, we know it, and then love is feeling that oneness with God and each other. So the third is defensiveness, and the antidote to defensiveness is non-resistance. As I described earlier with my whole airline adventure, if we're willing to be in the moment and give our full attention to the moment rather than letting our mind race off, we can get that divine guidance that's always there. It operates through our thoughts, through our feelings, especially through our intuition of what we need to say or do in a particular situation. But by being present, giving our full attention, miraculous things happen. It means being willing to be aware of our feelings and our intuition, but not let our fears and insecurities lead the way. So when we're defensive, we send out kind of a signal. You've ever walked into a room and someone's defensive, you can kind of pick up on it. And then that usually causes us to become defensive. It's like if someone's feeling like there's a threat in the room, that tends to be an energy that everybody can feel and start to react to. And we don't want that relationship to be held hostage, whether it's one-on-one or one in a group. We want to be able to let our suspicions and fears of all of the partners involved be released. So the eye of the storm. We know that in the center of a hurricane, of course, is an eye in which everything is calm, there's blue skies, because all of this energy is coming to the center and then just blowing straight up into the air, straight up into the sky. And it's a good symbol or metaphor for us that we're willing to get centered in a conflict situation or in a disagreement. That there's a calmness, there's a peace there, and we can invite other people into that peaceful center. We create a safe space for everyone. Our spiritual nature leads rather than our fear and insecurities. The key, though, is to be able to let go of our attachment to outcomes, our attachment to the process. We've got our plan. Are we willing to let go of the plan? And I'm willing to connect with the experience, like I said, that full attention. In the book, Gary describes that he rented a small plane so that he could fly 2 people out of his home at that time, which is Fayetteville, Arkansas, to the east, dropping off one in one place and then another in another, and then flying them back later in the day. The rental Cessna, though, was having problems with its instruments. And so here's Gary, they're flying back late in the day, much later than he had expected. There's a haze, so he can't see the ground, and his instruments aren't working well. And he, as a Cessna, he's also concerned about being blown off course. And he's really getting kind of scared. It's like, my goodness, what are we going to do? And then he just got centered again. It's like, okay, God, guide me. And he said, and then suddenly this bug hits the windshield of the plane. He said, how it got through the propeller and hit to the center of the windshield, I'll never know. But he said, oh, great. Now I got to look at a bug for the rest of the trip. But then he realized, he had a feeling that, well, here I'm concerned that I was being blown off course. If I align the bug with the sun, which is the exact direction we're flying, I can make sure that I'm flying in a straight line. You know. And it reminded me of this, scene from the movie Apollo 13, of course, that was out back in 1995, but it was based on the true story of the Apollo 13 astronauts in April of 1970. And, the commander, James Lovell, in this particular scene I've got the clip of, he's being interviewed by a reporter a couple of years before this all happened about, have you ever had a time where you're feeling like you're in an emergency and you just don't know what to do? So I'm going to have Duncan roll this clip, and you'll see this. They show the wife watching the interview on TV in the midst of being scared, or is her husband coming home?
Well, I tell you, I remember this one time, I'm in a Banshee at night in combat conditions, so there's no running lights on the carrier. It was a Shangri-La. We were in the Sea of Japan, and my radar had jammed, and my homing signal was gone because somebody in Japan was actually using the same frequency, and so it was leading me away from where I was supposed to be. And I'm looking down at a big black ocean, so I flip on my map light, and then suddenly, zap, everything shorts out right there in my cockpit. All my instruments are gone, my lights are gone, and I can't even tell now what my altitude is. I know I'm running out of fuel, so I'm thinking about ditching in the ocean. And I look down there, and then in the darkness, there's this green trail. It's like a long carpet that's just laid out right beneath me, and it was the algae, right? It was that phosphorescent stuff that gets churned up in the wake of a big ship, and it was just leading me home. And now, If my cockpit lights hadn't shorted out, there's no way I'd have ever been able to see that. So, you never know what events are going to transpire to get you home.
Okay. Spacecraft Commander Jim Lovell, no stranger to emergencies, he.
You never know what sequence of events are going to transpire to get you home. And I've had this happen many times in my life where I have this bright idea of the way things are supposed to go, or the way things are supposed to be, or the outcome that I want to see happen. And what I discover in retrospect is God was protecting me from making the wrong choice, the wrong decision, the wrong path. Sometimes there needed to be a delay in me getting to Seattle or whatever. And a lot of times those things that are going wrong are actually setting up the circumstances so that we can have the spiritual growth in the moment and see what's the right way or the right thing to do. Eric Butterworth, in his book, In the Flow of Life, gave the story of a prisoner. Someone had been sentenced to 5 years for something he didn't do. And he gets in there and he just was very sullen, didn't want to interact with the other prisoners, was just, grousing about life. One of the older prisoners, after observing that for a few days, came up and sat with him. And first he was kind of trying to pretend to ignore the guy. He says, look, I've been here for 15 years, and I've observed people, come in for a variety of reasons, some of which who claim they didn't do what they were accused of doing. He says, it doesn't really matter now. You are here in this prison, and you are here for 5 years. Doing what you're doing isn't going to work very well. Why don't you look at the opportunities that you have here? How can you make yourself a better person? How can you help the people around you be better people? He says, look at all of the courses that they offer here. You can actually get a free trade or college education in these 5 years you're here. So give it some thought. And it just shifted the guy's attitude, and he's realizing, yeah, you're right. And sure enough, he took a series of courses to become a computer technician, and was able to have very gainful employment. When he was able to finally get paroled a year earlier after 5 years, he was able to go out there, and he used those 4 years, again, the opportunity for him to get a free education that he couldn't have afforded before. So, electricity flows through a wire. And even if you don't understand electricity, you understand a dimmer switch. The dimmer switch actually constricts or raises the resistance in the wire so that less electricity comes. And think of that as a metaphor too, because we are always part of the God presence. And this amazing energy, this power flows through us until, or unless, we resist it. And when we resist it, we kind of start choking off those vital energies that are always there for us. But if we're willing to let go and allow that flow to come, perhaps your bright idea may be able to, you can set it aside for a divine idea, which will give you much better results. There is no separation between ourselves and God. In your bulletin, I'm going to have Duncan put up the slide, we've got an affirmation. Each week we've had an affirmation to work with, so this is the one to work with this week. I'll read it through once. I no longer resist life's challenges, and I surrender to the natural movement of spirit as it guides me with ease and grace to higher awareness. And then I'll have Duncan put up the next slide. So here are this week's takeaways. The antidote to defensiveness is non-resistance, being willing to get centered, give our full attention to the situation, be willing to be open to our feelings, to our intuition, and go with the flow. And then we have this other wonderful spiritual gift, understanding. So being willing to be open and receptive to the guidance that comes, whether it's a thought, whether it's a feeling, whether it's an intuition about what it is we need to do next. And how does this work if it works out more pleasantly? There was this woman who was the head of a nonprofit organization in Houston. And they had a wonderful opportunity for for growth and to raise the visibility of the organization. The Board of Trustees had actually been able to set up 11 events in the Houston area. Problem was these 11 events were within 5 days. And they had 6 weeks to prepare for it. Now this woman, her name is Rima, was like, at first was, I can't possibly see how we can do this, and started really feeling discouraged. And then she got the guidance to, well, let's bring in her whole team, 4 other people, and just kind of lay out, here's the situation. It's a wonderful opportunity for our nonprofit. But I'm really scared about if we can handle this. And so the 5 of them sat there and talked for about an hour and realized, we can do this. It'll just take a lot of legwork, a lot of preparation. So they all agreed that during those next 6 weeks, they would work 7 days a week and prepare for this thing. And it came off relatively easily, very few hitches in these 11 events. And then afterwards, they were able to take comp time and stuff and just relax. But she said how the difference between if she had been resistant to it and if she had just kind of laid it on her employees rather than, let's talk about this, how are we going to do this together? Forming that teamwork rather than having, so that everybody was on the same page and understanding we can do this, rather than feeling resentful or resistant. That's how this works. Our closing story is about a couple who had, a very unpleasant experience. Everything was going wrong until they recognized it was just time to let go and let God.